Are you the quantum mechanics?
Yes, we are the Quantum Mechanics, the paranormal podcast for the believers, the doubters, and everybody in between. We're back in the studio, and that means that we did make it out alive. You have obviously heard the episode by now. We have had a week to cogitate and... Why did I say cogitate? I've never used the word cogitate.
Process, I think
Process,
is a good
yeah,
word.
that's a better word, yeah. Cogitate, that's what my dad would say. We've had a week to process and think about things, and we will put that up onto the extra scoop. And it's not like we're just trying to pull it out for more content. It is that. No, it's not that. It's that, like when we recorded the extra scoop last week, it was about 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And we were very, very, very tired. And then I've had a week to sleep and think about what actually happened and whether it's changed my view on stuff.
Well, I think the other thing is we discovered a lot after the episode because, you know, we got at least 2...
That's right.
I guess what would be described as EVPs out of it. And certainly the one, if you've heard the episode, if not, go back, it was last week. There's a thing where a screw dropped and Tim is talking and there's just bizarre sound. And yeah, we'll talk about it in more on the extra because we could go on for about 20 minutes about it. I was struck by the EVPs, and the other thing I was struck with was how everything seemed to just kick off at the same time, which was really odd.
Yeah, that's right. And that is something that quite a lot of people say, people who are, I don't know, much more sort of into ghost hunting and do spend a lot of time regularly. There is this idea of, well, the energy is there and then the energy is not there.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what they meant, I guess, until we were there. And so it's very hard to explain, isn't it? There's a sensation, and I don't know whether it's, you know, akin to lining up for a fairground ride and it's that sort of anticipation, or whether there is something more ethereal about it.
Yeah. Well, it was quite ironic because we did get our first bad review ever. We've never had one, and it was accusing us of being too sciencey and not paranormal enough. But I think if you listen to last week's episode, you can't get more paranormally than that.
No, that's true. I did have a pocket of ectoplasm.
Yeah. Well, this week we're going to go sciencey.
It's not too sciencey, though, is it? It has got a reason.
It has got a reason, yes. Well, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about scientific evidence that could suggest we live in a simulated reality. If you remember, we discussed the possibility that space may be nothing but the edge of our simulation, or possibly has been created to keep us within the confines of our simulation, which could imply that there are no other alien, quote-unquote, species in our galaxy or universe.
That's right.
And that got me thinking about one of the most discussed theories and ideas of modern times, the Fermi Paradox. Where are all the aliens?
Right.
Now, I'm sure most of you will know this, but I think it's worth a summary of the Fermi Paradox. I'm using an article by Elizabeth Howell from space.com and the SETI Institute as my source here. The Fermi Paradox seeks to answer the question of if the universe is so immense, there must be thousands, if not millions, of other intelligent beings out there. But where are they, and why don't we see them? Given that our solar system is quite young compared to the rest of the universe, roughly 4.5 billion years old compared to 13.8 billion, and that interstellar travel might be fairly easy to achieve given enough time, Earth should have been visited by aliens already. That's how the theory basically goes, right? Now, the paradox takes its name from Nobel Prize-winning physicist Enrico Fermi, who supposedly made these points during a casual lunchtime conversation in 1950. Now, the implications have had astrobiologists and other scientists scratching their heads in the decades since. Fermi grasped that any civilization with a modest amount of rocket technology and an immodest amount of imperial incentive could rapidly colonise the entire galaxy. Within a few tens of millions of years, every star system could have been brought under the wing of the Empire. Tens of millions of years may sound like a long project, but in fact it's quite short compared to the age of the galaxy, which is roughly 1,000 times more. So that's the basis of what people believe the Fermi Paradox is all about.
Yeah, that's how I've always understood it, yes. Because I think somebody Was it Stephen Hawking kind of took it to another level and held a dinner party? Or maybe that was for time travelers. Maybe it was time travelers and or aliens. But he said, right, I'm having a party at this time, turn up. Maybe it was for time travelers. I apologise. Yeah. But so sort of a similar idea.
Well, it all started with either a dinner party or a lunch, where these things seem to do. So that's what many believe the Fermi Paradox is. But later in the episode, we're going to find out that maybe it's not a paradox and has very little to do with Enrico Fermi. More on that coming up, but let's focus now on theories relating to the Fermi Paradox to look at why we've not encountered alien life. I mean, I know some people might disagree with that assumption, but I think for this episode, we're going to work on the assumption that we probably haven't encountered alien life.
Yeah.
So let's start with the premise that there must be other intelligent life forms or advanced civilizations in our galaxy and explore the possibility that could we actually be alone? Now, this theory was put forward by Michael H. Hart from the National Centre of Atmospheric Research in his seminal 1975 paper, An Explanation for the Absence of Extraterrestrials on Earth. Hart's summary. We observe that no intelligent beings from outer space are now present on Earth. It is suggested, in his paper, that this fact can be best explained by the hypothesis that there are no advanced civilizations in our galaxy.
Okay.
So a controversial starting point, right?
It is, but you've got to make an assumption somewhere. You've got to start with an assumption somewhere.
Yeah, indeed. Well, the starting point for Hart's hypothesis is that there are no intelligent beings from outer space on Earth now. He accepts the possibility that aliens may have visited in the past, but if they did not settle here or colonise Earth.
Just did the pyramids.
Yeah, then went.
Yeah.
Done my bit, I'm off.
Yes.
He divides explanations that scientists use to try and solve the Fermi Paradox into four main categories. So these categories are the most used explanations as to why aliens are not on Earth now. Now, I'll do a summary of the four and then we can look into Hart's critique of them afterwards because it is quite interesting. So he calls the first category physical explanations, that physical, astronomical, biological or engineering limitations make interstellar travel infeasible.
Right, okay.
So that's number one category. The second category he calls sociological explanations. Basically, they're not interested, motivated or organised to come visit. Or there may be a political reason they've not come. I was thinking like Star Trek's prime directive of not interfering in developing civilisations, or the alien civilization believe it's a waste of resources to just flit around the galaxy looking for people.
That when you think about it, you do wonder. I mean, we've speculated in the past why they turn up and take the cows, but those sorts of things where they turn up and like those brilliant stories, like when we're down at Cannock Chase, the alien pushing a car. If that's true, why?
Yeah.
Just
what
why?
is that about?
Yeah.
The third category is called temporal explanations, that though these extraterrestrials have the technology to travel the galaxy, their civilizations are so young they've not had time to reach us yet. I guess they could still be on their way.
Yes. Yeah.
The fourth category is that they visited us in the past but didn't colonise us or didn't think we were worth bothering with and never came back, just took a couple of cows and then disappeared. Now, Hart goes on to give his reasons why he rejects all of these four categories as to why aliens are not visiting us. So in terms of the first category, physical explanations or limitations, my reading of this was it kind of ties into that, that rear view thinking we've talked about on the podcast before. We tend to base things in our current understanding or our own frame of reference. I'll explain what I mean by that. So we can't envisage travelling at the speed of light. So we frame things in that context, but maybe aliens can travel that fast, right?
Yes.
An alien spaceship coming from our nearest neighbouring star, Proxima Centauri, could be here in just over 4 Earth years if they travelled at the speed of light. For us to get to them with our current technology, it would take 6,300 years.
That's a big difference. Wow, 6,000.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a crazy amount of time. But of course, don't forget, if you take into account what people like Bob Lazar say, you don't necessarily have to travel at the speed of light as in the way we think about it in Star Trek. It could be that they bend space and time, therefore making that light speed travel feasible because they're not actually travelling at the speed of light in their own gravitational bubble. That's the way I sort of understand it.
Yeah. It reminds me of that. There's a good explanation. I know it's been in other sci-fi movies, but it's used in Event Horizon, isn't it? Where a guy gets like an A4 piece of paper and he puts one dot at one end and one dot at the other and says, well, it takes a long while to travel that. But if you fold the paper and put a hole through it, you're immediately there.
Yes, exactly.
We also tend to frame things in terms of our lifespan. So the idea of travelling for thousands of years seems unthinkable. But what if an alien lifespan is thousands of years? So the oldest tree on our planet is estimated to be nearly 5,000 years old. So it's not inconceivable that an intelligent alien might be able to live that long or even longer, right?
Yeah, and I think people have found... I love long-lived things. Didn't somebody find a scallop that was 800 years old or something?
Yeah, I do remember something like that, yeah.
And as we famously know, lobsters are immortal.
Lobsters aren't immortal. This was a mistake.
It was a mistake
that Ben made on one of our podcasts.
Yeah. But they are delicious with butter.
Yes, which really upset the lobster community.
Probably where we got the bad review from, to be fair.
Yeah. Now, maybe also aliens have developed hypersleep, so, time limitations are not important to them. Maybe in their quest to colonise the galaxy, they've created intergenerational space travel with the offsprings of the original crew carrying on their journey. All possible, right?
All completely possible.
So let's move on to the second category Hart talks about, sociological explanations, which he says is, I quote, fundamentally flawed.
Okay.
So aliens have not visited us because they're not interested in space exploration, or there may be political reasons, like I was mentioning the Prime Directive. He points out that we are interested in space travel, and that, yes, sure, an alien civilization, let's call them the vegans, might not be interested or want to explore the galaxy, but the premise of the argument only really works if you assume that all alien civilizations in our galaxy are not interested in space travel, contacting other life, or colonising it. And why would that be the case? The fact that we are keen on space exploration, have a history of colonising different lands, suggests that at least some of the other civilisations out there who may be more advanced than us would have the same motivation and would have found Earth.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You mentioned the vegans. The vegans. The Vogons, obviously, is from Hitchhiker. Yeah. And Douglas Adams describes the planet of cricket, who had never thought to look up at the stars. In fact, had never even thought about going into space or doing anything, and had lived in perfect peace and harmony until one day a spacecraft crashed on their planet. And then they realise that might be a threat to them. And then they become the most violent race in all of the galaxy.
Right.
But so that is kind of an interesting idea. It hadn't really struck me, the sort of fundamental idea he was exploring there. But yeah, you framed that in a way that made me think, gosh, that's quite a clever idea, that maybe you wouldn't be interested, and then one day you do become interested, maybe because you realise somebody else is out there. I suppose that's like, again, Stephen Fry. He said, no, not Stephen Fry, he's funny. Stephen Hawking. He said maybe we shouldn't be broadcasting where we are, just in case they kind of they because their assumption that it might be like the cricketers. They come, that's with a K, by the way, if you haven't read the book. They come and destroy us because they've just been given the incentive to by realising that we were here.
If you go with the probability that there are thousands of advanced civilizations out there in the galaxy, his argument in the paper is, well, I get that some of them might not want to do space exploration, but all of them don't. We do. We're the exception. And we're the exception in terms of colonisation of different lands. Seems unlikely.
Yes.
Let's look at the temporal explanations that ET has just not had enough time to reach us yet. It's a big galaxy, right, Ben?
Yes, it is famously known for that.
Now, Hart uses a lot of maths equations in this section of the paper. God, you got to wade through a few maths equations when you get into this stuff, don't you?
Oh, as always. I imagine you're going to put it all up on a board for me now.
I'm really not. I've just... Basically, mathematically, if other species had invented interstellar travel and explored / colonised the galaxy, the chances that they would have overlooked our solar system are possible, but very unlikely.
Right, okay. I mean, one of the other things about this is, as we go through, and I don't want to derail the direction of travel, but it could be that they are transdimensional as well, and therefore it's not just that they haven't been here, it's that they are here, and that is missing from the Fermi Paradox because... of all the reasons that we know about. And that could be the reason why we see UFOs and they disappear. And we've talked about the transdimensional ghost that is Nessie, not really a ghost. So it could be that too.
Yeah, we'll come on to some of those in a minute, actually.
Okay.
Now, of course, they may still be travelling to us, but given we are relatively a young civilization and planet, it's likely they would have come across us by now. They should be much older civilizations than ours, because in in our galaxy we are quite a young fledgling planet and civilization. Now, as to the final category, so we'll come on to a bit of what you were talking about there, Ben, that aliens have been here in the past, but basically thought the Earth and its inhabitants were not worth the effort and decided to leave and not come back. Hart says there are kind of subsets of this theory that are often used. Firstly, that aliens have visited us in the recent past, I don't know, say within the last 5,000 years, and that certain alien relics have been found that might support this theory. Now, that's all he says in the paper. I mean, we've talked about some of those supposed relics in other episodes. I'm not sure there's any definitive proof of an alien relic that I've come across. I mean, there's lots of ones you go, oh, that's interesting, but there's nothing definitive, right?
If there was something,
that we've seen.
Exactly. If it is definitive, I think it is probably in that locked room that Bob Lazar was going to. I don't really think it's a bet sphere or anything like that. Although, people would, I guess, argue about what they had collected from places like Roswell in terms of like little pieces of maybe perhaps hinting at nanotechnology and things like that. But I don't think there's anything you could actually hang your hat on. Yeah.
My reading of Hart's main argument against this is, A, why would they have waited so long to visit us? Because even in the last 5,000 years is in terms of the length of their civilization and how advanced they could be, it's a long time to wait to come. And why would they leave and not come back?
Yeah.
Then there is this idea that aliens have visited us, but in the Earth's distant past, I don't know, millions of years ago. Now, while that could explain the lack of evidence of credible alien artifacts, the argument of why they didn't stay or colonise or come back still remains, right? Why would they go? Now, some of you might be saying that doesn't mean they didn't come, but I think we need to look at colonisation here. It's kind of like the point Hart made earlier in his paper. Maybe one alien species would not come with the intention of colonisation, but it's unlikely that all alien species that have visited us would feel that way. Basically, again, given that we are a species, have a history of colonising different areas of Earth, it is likely that at least one or more of the alien species that have visited our planet would want to colonise it. Hart does briefly touch on something you mentioned and we've thought about, and I thought about quite a lot while reading the paper as well. Maybe the aliens are here or are coming, but we don't see them. Either because they don't want to be seen or we literally can't see them. So that's the interdimensional beings point. I mean, he doesn't go into much detail of this. He just kicks back against it. My reading of it was, there's not enough data, so I'm just going to ignore that point. That seemed to be his approach.
Right, okay.
I'll do a quick summary of his responses to these four categories before I read you his quite controversial conclusion. So, number one, aliens have not visited because they don't have the technology to get here. Now, I kind of agree with him. That is a huge assumption based on looking at things from our frame of reference, right? Especially given the likelihood they would be a much older species, so by implication, technologically advanced compared to us.
Yeah.
Number 2 is they can come here but choose not to. I do buy his argument that this might be true for some alien civilizations, but unlikely to be true of all the aliens in our galaxy who could get here. Number 3, they just haven't had enough time to get here yet. Again, unlikely given they're much older civilizations than us with much more advanced tech. The final one is they came and didn't stay. Now, the argument being, why would they come but not stay, not come back, and why wouldn't they have colonised us?
Well, maybe like us, they stopped at a Premier Inn and decided
that was enough.
That was one night was plenty.
For me, Hart's pushback against this theory is probably the weakest of the 4, because I thought some of the stuff that you were talking about, maybe they did what they needed to do and left, right? Bit like us at the Premier Inn. We had a sleep and we went. Yes. Maybe they did colonise us. We might be the result of that.
Exactly, and we've spoken about the mysterious bits of DNA in our code.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought maybe there's a galactic rule that whoever visits a planet first kind of puts their flag in the ground and no other alien species can visit.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe they are still here or visiting. I mean, we could do about 10 episodes on that. It's the rabbit hole that we talk about a lot, the conspiracy rabbit hole, but that is a possibility. Let's get to Hart's conclusion and discussion points. I'm going to summarise a little bit here. He writes, in recent years, several astronomers have suggested that intelligent life in our galaxy is very common. It has been argued that a high percentage of stars have planetary systems. Remember, this is 1975. Most of these systems contain an Earth-like planet. Life has developed on most of such planets, and intelligent life has evolved on a considerable number of these planets. He says, these optimistic conclusions have perhaps led many persons to believe that our starfaring dependents are almost certainly, sooner or later, to encounter other advanced cultures in our galaxy, and radio contact with other civilizations may be just around the corner. These are very exciting prospects indeed, so much so that wishful thinking may lead us to overestimate the chances that the conjecture is correct. Unfortunately, though, the idea relies on the assumption that thousands of advanced civilizations are scattered throughout the galaxy. Though it is possible that 1 or 2 civilizations have evolved and have destroyed themselves through nuclear war, it is implausible that every one of those tens of thousands of alien civilizations had done so. Our descendants might eventually encounter a few advanced civilizations which never chose to engage in interstellar travel, but their number should be small or could well be 0. It is the basic thesis of this paper, if it is correct, there are 2 corollary, that's it. There are 2 corollary I still can't say it. Corollary conclusions. So here is conclusions. 1, this one surprised me. An extensive search for radio messages from other civilizations is probably a waste of time and money. That was his first conclusion.
Is that because it would just take so long to get here?
They're not out there.
Oh, they're not out there. Oh, okay.
2, in the long run, cultures descended directly from ours will probably occupy most of the habitable planets in our galaxy. In view of the enormous number of stars in our galaxy, the conclusion reached in this paper may be rather surprising, he says. It is natural to inquire how it has come about that intelligent life has evolved on Earth in advance of appearance on other planets. Future research may well provide convincing answers to this question. Here's his big conclusion, Ben. You ready?
I'm ready.
Drum roll. In the meantime, Fact A provides strong evidence that we are the first civilization in our galaxy, even though the cause of our priority is not yet known.
In our galaxy, but not the universe.
Doesn't mention the universe, just our galaxy.
All right, okay. Go on. It's not much of a start, is it? Like, I was really hoping for green-skinned beauties like Kirk
Yeah.
came across. And not to be misogynistic, obviously green-skinned lovely gentlemen too, but...
Well, if Hart's proposition is true, Kirk's love life would be pretty barren, I think.
Yeah. It was mainly the star equivalent of Pornhub. Yeah.
Well, Michael Hart's paper in 1975 came to the conclusion that we are likely the first intelligent species in our galaxy and that we will eventually colonise the galaxy. Now, as you can imagine, Ben, this was pretty strong stuff. It not only ruffled a few scientific feathers, it became highly politicised.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, this leads me on to another academic paper published in Astrobiology in 2015. The author is Robert H. Gray, which I thought was quite ironic, given its alien connection.
I was just thinking, sort of a nominative determinism.
The paper is titled, "The Fermi Paradox is neither Fermi's nor a paradox."
Okay. Well, that blows that out the water. Next.
Now, Gray points out that the paradox is often cited in the discussions, papers and debates about the search for extraterrestrial life. This implies, Gray says, that Enrico Fermi, a great physicist, was sceptical about the possible existence of technologically advanced extraterrestrial life and viewed the absence of their visits as a paradox. But the available evidence shows that this was not his view.
He's been misquoted, is what he's basically saying.
Well, we'll get onto that. Fermi apparently never published a word on the subject of extraterrestrial life.
Did he not?
Or interstellar travel.
I honestly, if you'd have asked me an hour ago, I would have said he'd published a whole paper on it.
No.
Oh.
He is known to have asked, "Where is everybody?"
Because he'd booked a table.
At a lunch in
At a
1950.
lunch.
No, it's more than that.
Oh, okay.
He was questioning the plausibility of interstellar travel, according to eyewitness accounts presented later. If Fermi was sceptic about interstellar travel, then using his name for an argument that requires it is misleading. The author of this paper points out that it was Hart's paper, the one we just talked about, that stated they are not here, therefore they do not exist. And his work, Hart's, that he did later with physicist Frank Tipler, have been wrongly attributed to Fermi.
That's annoying for him.
Yep. The Fermi Paradox, Gray says, appears to confuse Fermi's question of where are they with Hart-Tipler's argument, misrepresenting Fermi's views and obscuring the identity of the actual authors.
Gosh, so who did all that obscuring? Or is it's just sort of word of mouth and it's passed down and...
Well, we'll come on to that because it's amazing how this thing snowballed. It's like, I think I was thinking it's like a butterfly effect, this whole thing.
Oh, okay.
When I mentioned, Ben, earlier that Hart's paper and the Fermi Paradox had political consequences, it really did, especially for NASA's SETI program and the search for extraterrestrial life. The Fermi Paradox caused a crisis in SETI beginning around 1975, just after Hart's paper was published. Now, when I read Hart's paper, I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, it did strike me as odd that Hart's first conclusion was we shouldn't waste resources on searching for alien life through radio waves, right? Seemed like a weird, you do all that big setup and that, oh, okay. Now, whether or not that was a deliberate attempt to undermine NASA and the SETI program and their search for alien life, it did result in an existential crisis for SETI.
Because people then began questioning their funding and the worthwhile nature of what they were doing. Right, okay.
More than questioning.
Right, yeah.
Back to Gray's paper, this second paper, to find out the problems it caused. He says, this crisis undermined the very foundation of the SETI endeavour, bringing into question the logic of the radio search paradigm by claiming that all searches of the electromagnetic spectrum might well be fruitless. Senator William Proxmire cited Hart and Tipler's work when the senator killed NASA's SETI program in 1981. He only killed it for a year, but he used language very much like the Fermi Paradox. He said, this was his words when he closed it down, If intelligent beings did exist elsewhere and possessed the technology for interstellar communication, they would have developed interstellar travel and thus would already be present in our solar system.
But I get angry with that because how can you say that? Because beings may pick up our radio transmissions years before we're able to do interstellar movement.
But in a way, it's funny. There's more politics coming up, but you can understand why politicians kind of leapt on this. It's reminding me...
Got to save money?
Well, a bit Copernicus-like, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
Because if you have a strong belief, especially, maybe a religious belief, that we are the children of God in his image, to be able to say, yes, we are the only beings in the galaxy and we're going to colonize it, that is probably a more comfortable message than an alien species is just about to chip up on your door who technologically will just blow us out of the water. I'm not saying that's why he said it, but...
No, but I thought, the Vatican seemed pretty chill about looking for aliens. In fact, they've got an amazing astronomy centre, and they've already got a position on aliens.
But relatively recently, though.
Yeah, maybe, okay, yeah.
So SETI was cancelled in 1981. NASA's SETI programme was restarted, but cancelled a second time in 1993 by Senator Richard Bryan.
I remember that.
And since then, no US government funds have been appropriated for searches for extraterrestrial life.
Right, so it comes from academic sources and donations, does it?
Yeah, private.
Right, okay. Because it was after 1993 that we had the SETI at Home project, wasn't it, running on our computers? That would be about 96, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
And I happen to know, because I've spoken to the guy who's doing it, there's a new British SETI project starting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're going to be looking at different wavelengths to the main, the original SETI project as well. And they're just in the process of, I think they are commissioning their, their receiving devices at the moment. So, yeah, people are still fascinated and putting money into it.
Well, if we get details of that, we'll stick that up on our social media and stuff so people can find out. Well, this purported paradox attributed to Fermi continues to have influence today, generating academic discussion and probably contributing to de facto prohibition on government support for research in this branch of astrobiology. But it is clearly not Fermi's, and it does not constitute a valid paradox, the author says. From my reading of this paper, it looks likely that the term Fermi Paradox, this is interesting, was first used by an author called David Stevenson in 1977. So that's 2 years after Hart's paper. Mm-hmm. Got a quote from him. Stevenson says, "At the time, the word paradox was used in conversation to describe the problems facing SETI researchers. And Carl Sagan's story about Fermi and the 'where is everybody' quote was often mentioned. I put single quotes around Fermi's paradox as an apology for using a short, convenient two-word label for a large and indistinct field of conjecture." And I've read bits of him. He hasn't directly said it, but the author regrets doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he was kind of using it out of context.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But has it really caused any... I mean, apart from the funding of SETI, has it really caused any problems?
Well, I mean, you say apart from the funding of SETI, I think it could be argued it literally put a line under our search, at least official search, for extraterrestrial life.
I mean, the other explanation, of course, could be that those senators have a briefing which lets them know that...
Could be that.
We've got the UFOs, so why bother? Yeah.
But yeah, so the phrase stuck, Fermi Paradox, and is why there's so much material and debate. I mean, if you do a search on the Fermi Paradox on Google, if you go to YouTube, you'll find hundreds of videos discussing it and different theories about it. And it all came from what to me seemed like a throwaway comment from Enrico Fermi. Let's do a quick summary of where we are. So in 1950, Enrico Fermi makes a brief comment over lunch about where are the aliens. This sparked many scientists and academics to explore theories as to why. In 1975, Michael Hart writes his paper we featured earlier, concluding the search for extraterrestrial life is pointless because we are the only intelligent life in the galaxy. 2 years later, in 1977, author David Stevenson coins the phrase Fermi Paradox as a kind of shorthand to the debate that has raged since Hart's solo work and his collaboration with others. In 1981, the politicians leap on the work of Hart et al. To start the process of shutting down NASA's SETI program for good. This all gets framed as being because of the quote-unquote Fermi Paradox. Although, as far as I can tell, Enrico Fermi, outside of some quip over lunch, did not develop any theories or work on the problem.
I'm going to be very careful about what I say to people over lunch now.
Really?
Otherwise, someone's going to go that Ben had come up with there are no prawns left
In the world.
Yes, and that'll somehow be extrapolated to the fact that we should, I don't know, end our fishing of delicious prawns.
The Ben Paradox.
The Ben Paradox, yeah. There are prawns on the menu, but there are no prawns in the kitchen.
Yeah.
It always happens to me. Every time I want the special or the thing I want on the menu, they've always sold out. Always sold out.
I kept thinking, while I was doing this, if only some of the people who were at that lunch could tell us exactly what Fermi said, right?
Have you found a quote?
Well, in 1984...
I'll have the breaded camembert, please.
Eric Jones solicited letters from the three surviving people present at the lunch. Emil Konopinski, Edward Teller and Herbert York, asking them about the lunch. Fermi had already died in 1950.
I was going to say the deaths have nothing to do with the food. I imagine, no.
Excerpts from the responses show that the conversation focused on interstellar travel and its feasibility. And prawns. No, it didn't. Now, Kopinski says, when I joined the party, I thought this was interesting. I found being discussed evidence about flying saucers.
Ah, okay.
That, he says, immediately brought to my mind a cartoon I'd seen in the New Yorker explaining why public trash cans were disappearing from the streets of New York City.
What?
The cartoon showed what was evidently a flying saucer sitting in the background and streaming towards it little green men endowed with antennas carrying trash cans.
Ah, right, yes, okay.
There ensued a discussion as to whether the saucers could somehow exceed the speed of light. Another who was at the lunch, Teller, recalls, I do not believe much came from this conversation, except perhaps a statement that the distance to the next location of living beings may be very great, and that indeed, as far as our galaxy is concerned, we are living somewhere in the sticks, far removed from the metropolitan area of the galactic centre. You can see.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about... Makes our lunches sound really boring, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's quite a lot of socialites and scientists there who, like, they take ideas away with them.
Another present at the lunch, York says of Fermi, he went on to conclude that the reason that we hadn't been visited might be that interstellar flight is impossible, or if it is possible, always judged to be not worth the effort, or technological civilizations don't last long enough for this to happen. York clearly recalled Fermi as questioning the feasibility of interstellar travel. Teller seems to have thought that distance and, by implication, difficulty of interstellar travel was the reason for not seeing extraterrestrials, and Konopinski did not address the topic, although he places the events in time because the cartoon he described appeared on May the 20th in 1950 in the New Yorker.
Right, okay.
None of the three respondents reported that Fermi questioned the possibility of the existence of extraterrestrials or suggested that not seeing any was a paradox. Yet those ideas are the core of the Fermi paradox as we know it. Fermi's question was recalled by Konopinski as, but where is everybody? By Teller as, where is everybody? And by York as, don't you wonder where everybody is? Which suggests the basic theme of where is everybody as Fermi's likely wording. It was Michael Hart in the paper we discussed earlier that first said They are not here, therefore they do not exist. The Hart-Tipler argument is very similar to the Fermi paradox, although there is a slight difference. The Fermi paradox is often posed as a question about why we don't see extraterrestrials, but it uses Hart's argument that we should, whereas Fermi's was basically, where are they? It was a completely open question from Fermi.
And a fair question.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have... It seems like he's ambiguous as to whether he believes or not, but he liked the debate.
Yeah, everybody was just debating these concepts, but
Right.
there was no conclusion and no work from him after it. Robert Gray's conclusion to his 2015 paper is, the so-called Fermi paradox misrepresents Fermi's views about the feasibility of interstellar travel and the possible existence of intelligent extraterrestrial life. It uses his name and authority for ideas originated by Hart and Tipler, and asserts a logical paradox where none exists. So it is difficult to see any valid use for the phrase. It is not Fermi's idea, and it's not a paradox. Fermi asked, where is everybody? Questioning the feasibility of interstellar travel, but not questioning the possible existence of intelligent extraterrestrial life. So it seems clear that Fermi's name should not be used for a so-called Fermi paradox, which depends on interstellar travel and which does question the existence of extraterrestrials, the opposite of his views.
Okay.
Fermi's question might more accurately be called the Fermi question about the feasibility of interstellar travel, to avoid mistaking it as an argument against the possible existence of intelligent extraterrestrial life. The argument they are not here, therefore they do not exist, was first published by Hart and extended by Tipler, and might be called the Hart-Tipler argument against the existence of technological extraterrestrials. This is not the same as the Fermi paradox, but it is the simplest question to answer. Where is everybody if interstellar travel and colonisation are assumed? It seems misleading to cloak the Hart-Tipler argument with Fermi's name and authority, because doing so deprives the true authors of credit and attributes views to Fermi which he did not hold. Some people may feel that the so-called Fermi paradox is a sleeping dog that should be let to lie because it's established in the scientific literature and public mind. But most people would agree that clearly mistaken and misleading terminology should be corrected. The issue is important because the Hart-Tipler argument was cited as a reason for killing NASA's SETI program on one occasion in the US Congress and under the guise of Fermi's name and claim of a logical paradox. It may continue to inhibit funding and research into this area of astrobiology.
Overall, then, that a conversation over lunch may have slowed down our ability to find other races.
A quip, just a side comment. I mean, when I started researching this episode, I thought we would be looking at the arguments for and against the Fermi paradox, which kind of in a way we have.
Yeah.
What I didn't expect to find is that the Fermi paradox is not a paradox and has very little to do with Enrico Fermi at all. Casual conversation and comment over lunch. And like I said earlier, it led to this butterfly effect that contributed to the closure of NASA's SETI program, resulted in thousands of academic papers and thousands of hours of discussion, and in many ways caused a massive blow to our search for life outside our solar system. So I feel we should call it now the Fermi paradox.
Yeah, paradox squared.
Yeah.
But the thing that I find peculiar is that people jump on that as if they'd never thought of it before. How can you have... Surely when you start looking at the stars and listening for signals, somebody's going to go, well, there's either going to be loads of them or none of them, or they're going to be really difficult to find. Yeah. And we're probably in the none of them stroke, very difficult to find. But that doesn't... Surely people went, it's worth continuing to look because they might be using different frequencies. They might be coming from over here, might be coming from over there.
But if you want to kill something from a political point of view...
But why do you want to... I mean, I know we just went through that, but it can't just be religious stuff. It must be, sort of like a typical populist thing, like, I don't want to do this, I want this to pay for... I don't know, the NHS. I know that's not the case in America, but you know what I mean?
But if you follow the logic of it, let's say Hart's slightly got it wrong. His kind of premise was they're not here now, they should be, so they don't exist. Maybe some of these calculations are wrong and they're about to turn up next week. Again, from forget putting aside any kind of religious beliefs, from a more authoritarian political view, you don't want your public panicking that some advanced technology could turn up and almost, derail our civilization. And that could happen tomorrow. You want to don't want that message out there, right?
No, but it's very different to hearing a blip from a million miles away and going, oh, that probably is an alien.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't stopped us. Probably 10 years ago, there was the conversation about have we found a sun with a Dyson sphere around it. And I don't think that had people in a panic. That had people in almost a euphoria of, gosh, could this be?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on, I don't know the motivations of those people. But, yeah, it is disappointing.
It would be. I thought it would be interesting if it had not been given that name, the Fermi Paradox, what difference that would have made to the debate. You know what I mean? Associating it with Enrico Fermi rather than, this guy Hart and Tipler, did it amplify it to a stage where it became more impactful? I'm not saying that Hart and Tipler did that themselves, because I don't think they did, but in fact, there's no reference to Fermi in that original paper. So I wonder if it's just amplified it in some ways. It'd be interesting to know if life would have been different. Would SETI still be out there listening for stuff? Interestingly, I haven't got the details with me, but I did see something about the wow signal the other week. Did you see that?
No, it's back in the price, is it?
Well, I think some... I don't know where, so it's probably something we'll have to come back in more detail, but I believe somebody came across another whale signal, and they seem to believe that it's to do, I think, with hydrogen gas in the distant galaxy. Yeah. So it's a natural phenomenon, seems to be the implication. So, yes, not an extraterrestrial, but I haven't dug deeply into it. It just came into my mind as I was...
I got all excited then.
I know. But again, it's funny how where this podcast takes you. I didn't think in my research on the Fermi Paradox I'd come up with it's really not that much to do with Fermi and it's not a paradox.
No, and I certainly didn't know it had so much to do with lunch.
Yeah.
I'm still upset about those prawns I was supposed to have last week.
I know, the Ben Paradox.
Yeah, and it's a real story, guys. We were late for the ghost hunt, so I couldn't have buttered prawns they had at this restaurant.
There was
buttered
a baked
prawns.
camembert as well.
And a baked camembert.
I had my eye on, but yes, we
had to ditch it.
We didn't ditch it. We had to not order it because we knew we didn't have enough time.
Yeah, damn it.
First world problem.
Yeah. Well, it was a third world problem when we checked into the Premier Inn, but that's a different story. Okay, thank you. That is actually really interesting from all sorts of angles, but also it comes back to that you got to be careful, even in sort of scientific doctrine, what you get told about the paranormal, because some of it is just a passing comment and doesn't really carry any intellectual weight.
Yeah, or exploration. Well, look, we like we said earlier, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but I think we'll probably focus quite a lot on our thoughts post our trip to Shepton Mallet Prison in the Extra Scoop on Patreon. So if you're so inclined, to come and join us there, and you'd be helping support us do more of those field trips. So
where do they have to go?
Oh, yeah, they have to go to patreon.com/TQMpod.
Patreon.com/TQMpod.
Yes,
thank
I forgot that bit. And yes, and a big thank you to all our Patreons who helped us fund that trip to Shepton Mallet. We really appreciate you.
Yes.
And joined us on the trip as well.
And joined us on the trip. And
so thanks to Cam.
Yeah, and Tim and Nicola, who you obviously heard on that episode.
Cool. We will be back next week with more quantum mechanicsness.
See you then. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Are you the quantum mechanics?